right. Thank you everyone for coming out here. Welcome to the Ethiopia Investment Summit at the 10th AFSIC Summit. It's an exciting time for us in Ethiopia, and the delegation here today will try to highlight some of the key policy changes in our country and some of the more exciting projects that are available for foreign investment. We have a packed schedule, so I'm going to get right into it. First of all, I'd like to welcome onto the stage Ato Admasu Taddese, who's the chairman of the board of directors of FSD Ethiopia and president of Trade and Development Bank, president and managing director of Trade and Development Bank. Ato Admasu, please.
Good afternoon. Warm welcome to you all. This Ethiopia Investment Summit. We have an exciting lineup for you this afternoon. Give you some nice updates and insights into what's happening into Ethiopia's economy. We have an excellent lineup for a panel discussion. And we'll also have a presentation, of course, to give you a little bit of a deeper perspective. So I'm going to invite the first speaker to get ready to come up. But just as a way of warming up the house, I'd like to just make sure that you're all awake this afternoon. I'm going to ask you a trivia question. Which are the top 5 African growing economies in sub-Saharan Africa in 2023? I'm going to ask people to just sound off their guesses. So the top 5 African growing economies in 2023. Any takers? There's a lot of enthusiasts here. So Ethiopia is perhaps an obvious one, but which are the other 4? Let's make it interesting. Senegal didn't make it this year. Rwanda? Kenya is in the top 15, unfortunately, this year, which is disappointing to me, particularly because I live there. So yes, Rwanda. Which is a big gas-producing bonanza in the making? Mozambique. And then there's a huge green minerals country, giant of a country that's coming up, DR Congo. Yeah. So those are some of the headlines, and of course Ethiopia is one of them. It's an exciting time with all of these different sectors kicking very nicely. But we will go straight into the panel, but I suspect there's going to be a presentation to kick off. So are we going to have a focused presentation, or are we going to move straight into the panel? I suspect we're going to go straight into the panel. Can I invite the panelists? We have Her Excellency, the State Minister of Finance of Ethiopia's government. That's okay. So I'll just quickly give you a sense panel. I was just introducing our esteemed State Minister of the Ministry of Finance, Semereta Sewasew, who will be giving us a keynote address before the panel kicks off. And we also have the distinguished Commissioner of the Ethiopian Investment Commission, Lelise, Neme. She'll be also on the panel. And we have the head of the Ethiopian Investment Holdings Group, which you will hear a little bit about if you don't know about it. Abdurehman Tahir will be representing that very interesting new behemoth of an institution in the Ethiopian landscape. And then we have 2 other very interesting gentlemen who are going to speak to us about one of the most exciting developments in Ethiopia's landscape, that is the Capital Markets Authority and the Securities Exchange, ESX. So with no further ado, it's my pleasure to invite Her Excellency Minister Semereta to give us the keynote.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Ato Admasu. Excellency ambassadors and ministers, business leaders, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, I see colleagues from Addis Ababa, UK Embassy, FCDO, also represented here. I would like to welcome you to the Ethiopian Summit. It gives me and my delegation great pleasure to participate in one of the largest and prestigious investment events on Africa, which brings together various investors, business leaders, and deal makers into investment opportunities and attract new and additional investment into Africa. It's also more exciting to join this important conference from Ethiopia, an emerging economy with vast and emerging market opportunity and a population of more than 100 million, of which about 60% is an active working force. As you might be aware, Ethiopia's economy registered a double-digit growth rate in the last 2 decades, which resulted in significant increase in per capita income, remarkable reduction in poverty, and considerable improvement in access to education, health, and infrastructure. More recently, despite a multitude of internal and external challenges such as conflict, COVID-19 pandemic, and severe drought, Ethiopia's economy registered an average growth of 6.1%, exactly what Atwadmas was telling us. Ladies and gentlemen, the major socioeconomic achievements highlighted above have been attributed to high public investments made in infrastructure and human capital development in these 2 decades. The public investment-led growth however, has been short in achieving sustainable growth, achieving structural transformation, and creating adequate jobs and stimulating private sector development, which is believed to create more jobs and improve universal access to basic services for our people. On top of that, financing investment programs and projects from domestic and public sources, mainly from borrowing on a long-standing development financing model. This financing model has resulted in forex shortage, increase in external debt, limited access to finance for private sector. Ladies and gentlemen, diagnosing the above problem, Ethiopian government has set out a wide range of homegrown economic reform programs, now in the second phase, aiming at ensuring microfinance stability, rebalancing a sustainable and fast economic growth for the country, creating an economic environment supportive of higher private investment and structural transformation. The reform agenda envisions to install a private sector-led growth model, very different from what we had attempted in the past 2 decades. Our reform agenda also focuses on macro, structural, and sectoral issues, developing the financial sector, capital markets, addressing bottlenecks inhibiting private sector development through continuous improving trade and investment climate, and promoting investment in agriculture, manufacturing sectors, unlocking potentials of tourism, ICT, and the mining sector are all worth mentioning. We are pretty much sure that the reform measures will help us realize a stable microeconomy that can sustain a rapid and inclusive economic growth by laying the foundations for a robust, resilient, and diversified middle-income economy, which is led by a vibrant private sector. For the interest of the summit, let me highlight some of the major reform measures which have taken since the launch of the Homegrown Economic Reform Agenda in 2019. To improve the overall business climate and the doing business ranking of the country, notable measures have been taken, and among those include the revision of the commercial law, investment proclamation, public enterprise laws, the launch of a public-private partnership law, liberalization and privatization initiatives of the telecom sector, logistics, power, sugar industry, and the financial sector, reorienting the credit facilities also for the favor of private sector engagement. The reform agenda took a course of action undertaking a comprehensive reform of restructuring and management of state-owned enterprise. In this regard, the government has established the Ethiopian Investment Holding to act as a strategic arm of investment for the government, which owns state-owned enterprise and serves as a vehicle to attract foreign investment in sectors where the participation of private sector used to be very limited, and a serious gap has been seen in markets. The Ethiopian Investment Holding is therefore working to install good corporate governance and ensuring profitability of state-owned enterprise to increase appetite of the private sector to invest in them, accelerating a smooth transfer of assets to the private sector and thereby improving investments in the country. As part of the reform agenda, the country is also contributing several reforms in the financial sector, aiming at modernizing and strengthening the development of the finance sector. The reforms intended to improve the growth and attract foreign investment, ensure financial stability, and improve financial service for its people. Hence, we have amended legal and regulatory frameworks in the country, currently opening up the banking sector for foreign operators. This aims to foster development in the banking sector, and recently we had a support from the UK government where we have a live example of what this could mean. We've also enhanced competition of service quality, delivery of foreign capital and expertise. The development of the capital markets is also another key element of the financial sector reform. Ethiopia has established a capital market authority to support the development of the national economy through mobilizing capital and promoting financial innovation and sharing investment risks and ensuring fairness, integrity, and efficiency of markets, as well as protecting investors. Under the capital market initiatives, the Ethiopian Securities Exchange, which we're happy to launch here today, is established to provide a platform for raising capital to promote corporate governance, attract domestic and foreign investors. The presence of capital markets signifies and promotes and provides additional new alternatives and instruments for investments in improving access to finance. The government of Ethiopia has also put in place the public-private partnership framework, which enables the private sector to participate in the development and delivery of socio-economic infrastructure and services. The private sector is increasingly using this platform, and the government has identified several bottlenecks for projects which it has addressed and continues to do so. These projects that we have are now waiting for investors to see, and we will soon be showing you in presentation of some of what those projects look like. Therefore, the government is taking several collected reform agendas that also allow us for undertaking efforts connected to setting up a blended finance framework which allows for the finance sector and other related reforms to be implemented. The blended finance approach is also another mechanism we're exploring to help both domestic and foreign investors by putting in place a de-risking mechanism for the private sector. The government, in collaboration with development partners, is also conducting a comprehensive nationwide assessment to undertake a significant reform of the insurance industry. To this end, the Ministry of Finance and the National Bank are looking into policy alternatives, strategic measures to strengthen the development of the insurance sector. In conclusion, I would like to say the Ethiopian government is working intensively to improve the trade and investment climate in the country, and we hope to address some of the questions through the upcoming panel. I thank you all.
Next, we have a short presentation to highlight some of the most exciting projects. I would like to invite Her Excellency, Ms. Lelise Neme, from the Ethiopian Investment Commission. She's the commissioner at EIC. Ms. Neme, please.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you again. I'm very happy to be here and to explain the potential in what we have in our hands.
Park will allow the investor to have their own infrastructure, with the modality of developed land, so they can build their own vertical infrastructure, or they can rent shades and start their own green investment in the shade with the 1 up to 3 months of operational. So this is one of the government has interest on investing in infrastructure to facilitate and to catalyze the investment accordingly. The Security Exchange is one of the interesting area. We want to launch it here for the first time, I think, and you all are lucky. So let's clap for this. So this Ethiopian Security Exchange, it has been established as the first modern and organized security exchange in the country. And Ethiopia is the largest economy, even if in the world, without this exchange, security exchange. Now we just launched ECX. This ECX has 69% of equity open for both domestic and foreign private sector investors. It has formed as a share company in line with the Ethiopian Capital Market Authority or Commission, EIH, FCD, Africa, EIC, not the Ethiopian Investment Commission, but the insurance company, including the Ethio Telecom is part of it. And why to invest in ECX will majorly the investment exposure to one key of macro strategic initiative in Ethiopia. It will integrate a business model of serving the many markets, fixed income and equity segment to utilize a state-of-art in electronic trading platform. This, we expect up to 50 companies will be listed in the first 10 years of its operation, including major state-owned enterprises. This will allow the financial sector to play on it. The last one, but not the least, is the Ethiopian Investment Holding. So I'm trying to be more fastest because we have very important guests here to explain it more than me, because they are the one leading the institute. So EIH, which is an investment holding, is a very strategic investment arm of the Ethiopian government. This EIH has a number of corporations, about 26, with diverse sector, including the Ethiopian Airlines is under this, and with a combined revenue of $60 billion with the development impact of they contribute more than 9% of the total tax contribution to the country. After EIH has been established, there are a lot of reforms has been done on state-owned enterprises to increase and improve their corporate governance structure, process, and system. This instills the commercial discipline and culture of across the key functions within each corporation. It cascades best practice and KPIs to best perform sovereign wealth funds and corporation. On the EIH, there are a huge opportunities. They will, as a mandate, this EIH has a mandate of owning, administrating, and managing and investing. So they are flexible to be a joint venture. For us, for EIC, for Investment Commission, they are our clients. So you can be, participate on that client so that you can get all the facility, the opportunity, and they will hold all the bureaucracy. That's also one of the good news we want to share with you. So there are a huge opportunity on EIH side, especially to be a strategic investment arm for Ethiopia. They are listed in the Ethiopian Security Exchange, including the Ethio Telecom. They already profile companies to be privatized fully or partially, like sugar factories and others. And they will also require equity and debt financing to expand their operation. EIH has developed a pipeline of investment projects in line with these needs. They have a lot of projects in their hands, so you can get it and share it, and to be, making decision towards that. So we expect there will be an optimization of through management and supply contract to be part of their investment in the country. So I thank you so much. I hope explain more during our panel discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Lelise. One of the things she was a bit modest about that she didn't highlight was one of the resource endowments of Ethiopia, which is women of great substance and great leadership. And it's not just the two ladies who you heard from, but there's quite a few others. So 50% of the human capital of Ethiopia is not silent and not producing, you could say. So we'll move very quickly into the panel. I'm going to ask our two distinguished speakers to start and join us at the front, Minister Semereta and Commissioner Lelise, please. And then you are going to get to see firsthand the captains of these new institutions that you've heard from the two ladies about. We have Dr. Brook Taye, who is the regulator, the head of the capital markets regulator. And then we have the CEO of the Ethiopian Investment Holdings, Abdurehman Tahir. And we have the gentleman who is driving the development of the Ethiopian Securities Exchange, Michael Habte. So you had the teaser from the two speakers. Now you will get an opportunity to get first-hand perspective from some of these very interesting people who are at the forefront of implementing these reforms that have been discussed. We're going to kick off with Dr. Brook Taye, since we are in London and this is the capital of the world's innovations in stock markets. And so, Dr. Brook, everybody's been hearing a lot about these reforms. We've heard it again this morning, and there's a lot of excitement as to what this means for Ethiopia's economy. What are the benefits you think this will provide, and how do you think it's going to transform the Ethiopian economy?
Thanks so much, Admasu, and thanks for everyone for joining. So I think, I'm not going to explain the value of a capital market. I'm sure you guys are aware, but one of the things that I will reference is the amount of value trapped in Ethiopia is exceptional. We are not extracting true value of companies, state-owned enterprises, private banks, because we do not have a centralized mechanism to really extract the true value of most of our capital. So for us, the most exciting aspect of it is when the exchange is operational, when the capital market authorities start giving license, we will be able to see finance flow into various sectors. If you look at the 30 banks and the 11 insurance companies, they have 350,000 shareholders right now without a centralized exchange, a centralized way of raising capital. Most of our banks, when they established 27 years ago, people were contributing 1,000, 10,000, 15,000 birr, and then now we have 30 strong banks, 11 strong insurance companies, all owned by the public. So imagine if we can have that success replicated in the agri sector, in technology, in manufacturing, in tourism. That's our role. We will be the conduit where people coming in who want to raise finance, the Capital Market Authority will be the forefront to protect investors' interests, make sure that all these interested entities provide us their prospectus, review that, and work through the necessary process of approval, and we'll be able to use the domestic market to mobilize resource, but also for foreign investors, the efficient way to enter a market where you don't want to have a full exposure of the market is to limit it through the capital market. So most foreign investors who are interested to tap into the Ethiopian market but do not want to expose themselves for the country risk, for example, then we would be the perfect avenue for foreign direct investment to tap into the market.
So you've just heard from the boss of the new regulator of the Capital Markets Authority. Now, that's the regulation perspective. It's the public policy desiderata, so to speak. But we all know that the proof of all the good stuff is in the actual eating. So we're going to ask the gentleman who's actually translating all of that into practice, give you a little bit of a flavor as to whether this exchange is still half pregnant or full pregnant or on its way to delivery. Michael Habte, tell us about the exchange, the ESX.
Sure. So can you hear me? Okay. Yeah, I think Brook has summarized very well kind of the benefits to the economy, etc. But the exchange itself is in the formation process. We're being formed as a joint venture between the government and the private sector. So Right now, we are being established as a commercial entity. EIH, which Abdurehman leads, has already subscribed the capital to establish the exchange. So the 25% of our capital is already secured. So we are here seeking additional capital investment from both domestic, foreign investors. So we're in that commercial establishment phase, if you want to put it that way. What are the main things that we need capital for? Any exchange today is more or less a tech company, so the trading system is very essential. That's one of the things we're raising capital for, but like any startup, we have to hire staff, have our office in shape, so all of these things have to come in place before the exchange launches. So we're aiming to launch the exchange next year, roughly. So the key benefits I think the exchange will bring, I think just to add on to what Brook said, is access to finance is one of the major impediments that we see across all African countries. So facilitating easier linkages between investors and issuers of capital, or issuers of businesses, as well as retail, small businesses, large businesses need more finance. So the exchange can provide a better avenue, a more efficient avenue to raise capital. So ideally in the next year, we'll be launching. That's our target.
Thank you for that, Michael. Now we turn to the big giant on the stage, Chief Executive Abdurehman. We just heard that you subscribed to 25% stake in the ESX. And not everybody in the room here may be aware that you sit on a lot of giants yourself, but you sit on giants. Tell us why people should be so excited to hear about the EIH. What is this animal called the EIH? What's been your journey in the recent years since your formation, and what do you think were some of your achievements so far?
Thank you very much, Almas. Good afternoon to you all. You know, the Ethiopian Investment Holdings, you heard about the overview of the country in terms of where the economic prospects are and the investment opportunities that are there in Ethiopia. So any investor who's looking for a partner in Ethiopia would have a reliable partner in EIH. You know, the government of Ethiopia, through the economic reform program that has been implemented in the past 5 years, has worked on expanding the available investment vehicles through which foreign investors could come in and invest in Ethiopia. You know, in the past, we had the industrial parks, which helped many foreign investors to come in and invest there, especially investment for export. Then the government has established the PPP framework, the public-private partnership framework, and the last vehicle through which the government thought would be a good one for foreign investors is Ethiopian Investment Holding. So we have two mandates. You know, on one hand, we are a state-owned holding company. So on behalf of the government, we are holding currently around 26 state-owned enterprises. And on the other hand, we are also working as the strategic investment arm of the government, and we are expected to act as a co-investment platform for foreign investors. So as the strategic investment arm, that's why we have invested 25% in the Ethiopian Securities Exchange. So as a holding company, as said, we have 26 companies, some of which are very iconic players in the sectors they are involved with. You know, the companies we own are involved in sectors spanning from agriculture to communication. So these companies were around, some of them for around a century, 80 years, 50 years. So the understanding that the companies has in the domestic market, because of the experience they have, the insight in the market trends, in the market dynamics is very huge. So there is a holistic understanding of how the domestic market in Ethiopia operates. So we understand the challenge that investors could face, the bottlenecks, where opportunities lie. So one of the value proposition we have is to make, we have is that understanding of the domestic market, which would contribute to anybody who's going to work with us. So secondly, as an active investor ourselves, we are going to contribute different assets in different forms. You know, the companies we have themselves, we are in discussion, for example, in order to optimize the companies we have, we invite foreign investors to come in, contribute capital, technology, know-how, in order to expand and improve the situation of these companies. We are going to contribute capital itself. We have assets like land, which are important for investors to come in. So we are going to contribute, we are going to have a stake in the projects that the investors are going to have in the country. Certainly, we know the access and the relationship we have with these regulators. You have Lelise here, you have Dr. Brook and Semereta. So that access is also, of course, going to give confidence to the investors because, some of the perceived risks would be mitigated. We understand that foreign investors think, there might be some change of policy, some certain regulations which might adversely affect the investment they are having. So those are the kind of things that we will mitigate. And of course, we are project developers ourselves. So for example, we have developed more than 20 projects, which we shared with some of the investors we are in discussion with right now. So these are the kind of value propositions that we have for investors. Any investor who wants to come to Ethiopia and partner with a government-owned entity would have a reliable partner in Ethiopian investment holdings.
Thank you very much, Abdurehman. I think clearly your perspective and the perspective of the two gentlemen who spoke before you give a real practical sense of what's happening on the ground in response to the policy changes, the exciting reforms, the innovations. There's not been a lot of experience with PPPs historically in Ethiopia, and in fact, you can say much of sub-Saharan Africa. It began strongly in South Africa and then Kenya. Have there been any PPPs already done? Can anybody on the panel maybe refer to any PPPs that have already been launched in the case of Ethiopia?
So we've launched the Scaling Solar project, 5 projects with the support of IFC. But unfortunately, there was a mismatch of expectation in terms of tariff, and one of the companies who actually won ended up not actually delivering on the project. But on the pipeline, the projects, PPP projects, and what has been discussed earlier, one of the binding constraints was for companies who were involved in PPP. They wanted to be able to have an offshore account, ONM account, and various types of structures that are different because they become an SPV and then invest in Ethiopia. They want to repatriate their financing. That issue has been resolved, but on the pipeline right now, we have energy projects, housing projects, oncology project that was mentioned. So it's a very attractive opportunity, and of course, Abdurehman and his team, they can co-invest, can partner. Not necessarily on a PPP, but on broader project areas. We have a very clear rules and regulation. We have a proclamation on how a PPP project can be implemented in Ethiopia.
Thank you, Brook. I think most people in this room would know that the journey of Africa's economic development has been very profound in 2 particular sectors, telecoms and banking. And anybody who's had a taste of investments in any of these 2 sectors in Africa know how profitable and how exciting it is. Ethiopia has already managed to attract a major investment in telecoms, which is a historic development. Who in the room here knows who that is? I think FCDO shouldn't speak because they would know too well. But who wants to guess who took the first big bite? Safaricom. Yes. Exactly. And so Safaricom is very much present in Ethiopia, and I must tell you, it's not just a simple entry for them. It was a very large investment, and I actually had the pleasure of co-financing some of their debt. So I can tell you, as a banker who is related to Ethiopia, but an independent banker in a sense, I've actually worked with a major investor, and it's very real. And it was a very exciting process. But that's just the first bite that's been taken. There's so many more very juicy bites to come. And I think this is where we open up the panel to the House and take specific questions that you may have. You've sensed, I think, the seriousness of the reforms, and it's been proven in telecoms already. It's coming in banking. It's coming in capital markets. This is really the dawning of a new frontier market, as the headline for this session said outside. And it is really a very exciting opening. So this is where you get a chance to pose questions to the floor. And they are ready to take any particular questions. I see a gentleman at the very back, and then we'll move to the gentleman right here in the middle. Could you please stand up and state your name and your affiliation, please?
message being sent to the investment community. The question I ask is probably the elephant in the room, and don't throw rocks at me, but it's about the currency, obviously. So the challenges for foreign investors with convertibility and so on. And I know Ethiopia has made strides in export-focused business development, et cetera. But just wanted to hear what you would say to investors about that outlook now. I know the central bank governor has made some interesting recent comments as well. So just want to hear what your views are there. Thank you.
Understandable question. We'll take a couple more and then come back to the panel. The gentleman here in the middle, please, sir.
It's a two-part question. Firstly is I went on to the Ethiopian Investment Holdings website, and there's no financial information there. I think that needs improving, because if you're going to be investing, you want to know what the shareholdings are and the financial performance. The second part of the second question is linked to this is, if I remember correctly from when I was in Ethiopia, private ownership of land and buildings is not allowed. So how do you square this with private ownership of financial assets but not real estate assets? And what about a mortgage industry? You won't get that unless you've got collateral and title deeds. And if title deeds don't exist, people are going to remain poor.
It's very good to see we have very sharp people today asking very pertinent questions. I can take one more speaker before we come to the first round of questions. So the floor is open. Go on.
So, hi, I'm Semereta, based at the British Embassy in Addis Ababa. So part one is to the room, really, to say that feel free to come and speak to us through the embassy if you want some help in the market and connecting us with our distinguished guests. And since all the hard questions have been asked already, I'll just throw you a nice softball one. Clearly, investing in Ethiopia, lots of opportunities, also lots of challenges. So what's your number one top piece of advice for investors or businesses looking at the Ethiopian market for the first time about how they can succeed? Thanks.
Thank you, Vicente, for the lighter question. And of course, credit is due to FCDO for the we've had here in the UK, not just on this visit, but on several occasions. And as a major funder of FSD Ethiopia, which I have the privilege to share, thank you, FCDO, for all the work that you Ethiopia move forward. And on this note, I'd like to take a moment to recognize another giant here in London who's been an excellent ambassador for Ethiopia, Ato Tafari Mellesa, who's been championing, again, the partnership between Ethiopia and the UK, promoting all of these opportunities actively on a daily basis. So, gentlemen, ladies, I don't know. I think the ladies have worked very hard by giving a very long statement in the beginning, so I'm not going to put pressure on them to tackle some of these curveballs, but I am going to let the panel just elect who wants to take the first question. The question about currency, which of course is not unique to Ethiopia. We know all across Africa there are serious problems now of access to hard currency, pressure with inflation and everything else. That's the broader African context. But give people a sense of what's happening in the Ethiopian context, and more importantly, what's the outlook?
All right, let me bite that bullet, and then maybe if I haven't done a good job, then my colleagues will chime in. So FX issue, I think, needs to be put in perspective. As far as all of you know, there is only one place where a dollar gets printed. That's in Washington. Every one of us needs to work really, really, really hard for every dollar that we generate. We export a $1.5 billion worth of coffee, and for that, millions of farmers have to work really hard to generate a $1.5 billion. We don't print dollars. We work really, really hard for it. So there is a supply and demand issue. It's a reality. It's all over the continent. If it was possible to ask your central bank to print dollar, of course, there will be no shortage. But the entire continent, we need to work really hard for every single dollar. So we need to look at investing in Africa. When you look at Africa and say, okay, what is the FX issue? You have to take that into consideration. If you're working in Ethiopia and your business is locally denominated, it's not a problem. You will never have a shortage of birr. But you will have a shortage of dollar because all of us have to work really hard for it. So that's the context. But what are we doing about it? There is a misallocation of foreign currency in our context. We don't really think that we don't generate enough for the economy, but we misallocate it because of our current structure. For that, we're working with the fund, we're working with development partners in order to have a path whereby we can guarantee you the defining constraint of Ethiopia's economy won't be Forex in a very short-term time horizon. We're very much clear as to how we will be able to do that. Once the decision has been made, once the clarity is there, once we have an agreement with the fund and others, we'll come back to the market and announce how we will achieve that. But the main aspect of it has to be considered. Ethiopia is a patience market. It has to be an investment where you look at a long-term strategy, a long-term view. We're doing a couple of things at this point in time in terms of managing our debt. As you know, we've asked the common framework under the G20 common framework to resolve any pending debt issues. That's something ongoing. Once the fund program is defined, it's something that we'll be able to resolve. We have not borrowed, a very conservative government, we have not borrowed for the past 5 years $1 on a commercial terms. It's a very constrained, a very austere, a very strategic approach to make sure that we need to resolve these legacy issues, and then we can really start driving the economic reform of the country. So, there is always that kind of holding back and say, look, I'm going to invest my money in Ethiopia. When I want to repatriate, what's going to happen? Yes, there are short-term issues, and as I've said, this is something that we're working through the mechanism on how to resolve that. But since your involvement in the economy by itself will help us to generate more dollars. So which comes first? It's the chicken and egg problem. But if the Kenyans can manage, they have a constraint, but if Kenya can manage to have a mechanism where FX is not a constraint, we have 4 million diasporas who are sending us over $6 billion every year. We need to figure out our allocation inefficiency. We need to have more investment to come in, FDI to come in. Safaricom's investment, $1 billion in Ethiopia. It's also a great indicator that if you're looking at long-term, if you're looking at patient capital, Ethiopia is a strategic investment opportunity, and which will be able to pay off.
Thank you, Brook, for reminding us that current account deficits are much more common than we would like to see them. I think they're a global phenomena. I think, of course, Ethiopia's challenge is historically it's not been a very strong export economy. And I think for those of you who observed some of the presentation slides from Lelise, you'll have noticed 26 industrial parks. And if you look at the genesis of these industrial parks, they don't go more than 7 or 8 years. I think the real big push has come in recent years. And you can just see that is all intended to reorient the economy to become more export orientated. And the incentives that come with those industrial parks are really, really strong. That's one of the structural solutions to this problem that is very real, but I think can be addressed. The other thing, of course, is the opening up of the economy. Safaricom was just one of many to follow. With the opening up, the privatization, all of the different investment sectors that are opening up, including mining. Not many of you associate Ethiopia with mining, but I can tell you as one of the active financiers in Ethiopia, we're working on a number of very interesting mining projects. And there are miners who have discovered very interesting opportunities. These, again, will help deal with some of these Forex issues. No need to talk about the banking sector, because the banking sector is probably the only African economy that has this huge banking sector that's completely closed. Not a single dollar of investment has gone in. So I think if these reforms, even if they work 50%, I think you'll see the needle moving quite a bit, because it's a huge change from the past, massive. Everybody knows that the great success of Ethiopia the past several decades has been infrastructure-led by and large, energy, roads, and so on. A lot of that was public sector driven. Now you see this very strong narrative coming through on attracting private sector investment into the country in a way that's never been the case. The last time this kind of characteristic was evident in the case of Ethiopia was during the imperial government some 50, 60 years back. Over the past 50, 60 years, none of this has been possible. Ethiopia, and I can tell you as a diasporan who has investments all over the world, it was very difficult to invest in Ethiopia up until recently, including the banking sector. My wife happens to be an American citizen, and she called me up one day and she says, I'm finally investing in the Ethiopian banking sector. She was not allowed in the past as well. So I'm just trying to give you a very personalized view of how real this opening up is. And as we know in business, first mover advantage really matters. Those who move early get the worm, right? That's why Safaricom's probably in for a very good run. Yeah. But then there's a second license and maybe a third license to follow. So there's a lot of exciting developments. And so that is really what the commissioner's been trying to highlight here for us. But then, of course, there's the issue of the land. So how serious are we with reforms on land? That's another paradox in the history of Ethiopia's economy. Who wants to take the vexing issue of land?
Let me highlight. Thank you again. Let me highlight on the shortage of FX, and then I'll go through the lands. So on the Forex shortage, yes, we have a challenge, but it's a temporary challenge that I want to give you the assurance of the government's commitments. So we're trying to diversify our export. So our export market will be diversified. So there are a lot of products that we are going to set to export markets that will allow us to at least to minimize the challenge. The second thing is import substitution. You know, previously, all of our industrial parks are export-oriented industrial parks, so everyone needs to export 100%. Now we just make a decision to make it 50%. So 50% for the import substitution, 50% for export market. So this will allow us to be flexible on having our own products in Ethiopia. The third one, which will be launched very soon, is allowing the FDIs to participate on export and import, including wholesale and retail. This will allow the FDIs to participate in this exclusive sectors that will, manage the challenge of FX. And the first one is on the opening up. It's already mentioned by Admasu, and the free economic zone also going to be established in Ethiopia, Dreda Free Economic Zone. That will allow to be flexible. So the opening up will definitely dramatically change the Forex challenge. On the land issue, yes, the land is owned by government and the people of Ethiopia. Maybe there might be a few miscommunication. Yes, still there is a title deed that we will give for the investors in the private sector, but it's a lease base. So depending on the investment, you might get 70 years, 45 years, 35 years, and it might be decreased than that, depending on the investment. So now any investor who wants to invest like with the real estate or other business, it's allowed to have a real estate business in Ethiopia, including FDIs. They can have a real estate business in Ethiopia. Even they can own a house if they invest more than $10 million of investment in the country. So this is how we are going to flexible the land issue. The third one is where we have the industrial park. This industrial park will allow the investors, it will allow the investor to get these facilities easily. So this industrial park will allow the investor to own their own developed land and to build their own vertical infrastructure as per their design and content. That will allow or be flexible on the land issue. But in long term, we are flexible and open. As you see, most of us are young. We don't like bureaucracy. We need new things. So we are open for new discussion. So this is the approach that we want to share with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Lelise. I see Abdurehman wants to come in.
Yeah, there was a question about Ethiopian investment holding in terms of finance, but to briefly comment on the land-related issue, I think it's a misconception. Any property that's on the land is owned by whoever owns that property. So real estate is not part of what we are talking about. Is the how the government has been reforming in terms of in order to improve the tenure security over land. So whether you are an investor or any citizen in Ethiopia, you will have 100% ownership of any property that you have on the land, especially real estate. So the real estate is owned by its particular owner. So that's not under question in any manner. So whoever comes and invests, even if it's in agriculture, you will have, as Lelise was saying, through lease, around 99 years lease will be transferred to you. So you will be able to use that land for that long. The system that we have, it's a kind of double-edged sword. The system that we have partly has to do with, in terms of whenever the government wants to access land, in other countries that has very much different land system than us, the amount of, for example, the kind of compensation that these countries has to pay in order to acquire certain plot of land for investment is huge compared to what Ethiopia does. So I think, but in terms of investment, I don't think it has that much of an issue. And especially for farmers now, they have the title deed, which enables them to use the land as collateral if they want to access finance from any microfinance institution or bank. So coming to a question about the financial disclosure related issue with Ethiopian investment holdings, I understand we had some issues with our website, which is true. Otherwise, those companies were transferred in June 2022. So it has been only a year and a couple of months ago. So the first year that these companies were managed under us, the last time we did the performance review, we have disclosed through some of our communication platforms. The amount that Lelise has described earlier, the amount of revenue that we have made, around 16 billion, the profit we made. Currently, in terms of value, the assets we manage are, I think, around 2.4 trillion birr, which is around 45 billion USD. So we understand that's partly one of the values we are adding to the state-owned companies in Ethiopia. We are disclosing their finances through different platforms. So definitely we will do that. And
thank you very much, Abdurehman. Maybe just one thing to highlight for the audience on the land issue. There's always a question of what's the policy framework, and then there's a question of the efficiency of the administration of even leases. And I'm highlighting this because with the advent of COVID, we saw a global trend of digitization. One of the very exciting things happening in Ethiopia now is the implementation of a land bank that is now digitizing title deeds. So the administration, the bureaucracy, the ease of actually managing your lease holdings is also another very, very interesting area. I know we're trying to do that in Kenya as well. I know there's some people here in the room from Kenya. Kenya is also going through a digitization process in terms of titles, land deeds. And so this is going to make everybody's life a lot easier. I own properties in several African countries. They all happen to be leaseholds. I only have one freehold because I bought it from somebody who had an old historic position. But leaseholds are very, very common. Just to remind everybody in the room, it is actually the norm in most of Africa. The question is the administration and the efficiency of it. We heard the bell. I don't know if the bell was intended for me or just to indicate that the session was over. When you give me a mic, sometimes I get a little bit liberal. But if we don't have much more time, I'm going to just perhaps ask for your indulgence and ask the State Minister maybe to give one final remark before we close, if that's okay. Yeah, Minister Semereta, just a closing remark from you.
Yes, thank you very much. Again, I would like to thank everybody that came to this room. We're delighted to present Ethiopia and the kind of government that we have that's really serious on undertaking a lot of reforms. Even on this table, we see concrete examples of, formation of EIH, the Ethiopian Exchange Authority, the Ethiopian Capital Market, the Ethiopian Exchange, the Securities Exchange. practical steps that we are taking in terms of opening the telecom sector, the financial sector, everything that proves we are a country that is heading in the right direction. Of course, it is a country with a huge amount of potentials now. That's no brainer. And we talk about huge potentials within the country, but really would like to assure you that administrative-wise, we're really working to improve our institutions, regulatory frameworks, with a very much focused intention of making sure that the overall environment is conducive for the private sector. And so in spite of the challenge that we face, this we feel are temporary challenge, but we are all working to address those. Thank you.
Hello. Sorry, everyone. Thank you very much. I just want to say one more thing before you leave. His Excellency Ato Tafari Mellesa, the ambassador, has invited you to a reception between 5 p.m. and 7 p.m. at the embassy. And it would be a more intimate environment, and we will look a closer look at the Ethiopian Securities Exchange and opportunities around that. Thank you.
The great Walia ibex is known to climb some of the steepest rocks known to man, always defying gravity, never afraid of taking risks. A nation's dream is fulfilled by the strength and determination of its people, by building strong foundations around capabilities for accelerated growth, added with the strong will and desire to succeed against all odds. Ethiopia has recently come into its own as an economic force within the continent, enabling and empowering its people to overcome the challenges of our times, including climate change, food, and energy security. For this to become a reality, a clear, cohesive, and concise vision for success was activated. Introducing Ethiopian Investment Holdings, the strategic investment arm of the Ethiopian government established in December 2021 to attract and deploy long-term investment capital that serves the vital needs of the Ethiopian economy. Ethiopian Investment Holdings is the home of more than 24 state-owned commercial assets that have been the pride and joy of the Ethiopian economy for the past several decades. Ethiopian Investment Holdings was launched with focus on new investment and exercising the ownership function of the Ethiopian government for public commercial assets and delivering long-term value for current and future generations of Ethiopia, fulfilling its obligation and its promise to the nation. This portfolio includes companies in aviation, finance, energy, manufacturing, agriculture sectors that will continue to define the tremendous success of the Ethiopian economy for generations to come. Ethiopian Investment Holdings' mission is to usher in global investments and modern capabilities into Ethiopia's strategic industries and assure their global competitiveness. It will accomplish this mission by implementing best practice corporate governance and professional management across its subsidiaries and investees. The IH aspires to protect the interests of Ethiopians and their investment partners by adhering to top-level transparency and disclosure standards. Ethiopian Investment Holdings is an associate member of the prestigious International Forum of Sovereign Wealth Funds, while establishing relationships with various international financial and investment entities. Ethiopian Investment Holdings, real opportunities ahead.